You know, when preachers say you can read the Bible 1,000 times and keep finding new things, we're not just saying that to sound impressive. We're not just trying to make the Bible sound more remarkable than it is. It actually is that remarkable. I don't know how many times I've read the New Testament, but I can tell you every time I've read it, I have found at least something that I had not considered before. It's not that I've read a verse that I've never read before. I've read all the verses countless times. But I keep finding new thoughts. I keep finding new ways to make application. And I keep even discovering new connections with other texts that I would never have thought of before and that I never had imagined before. There's one such example that happened to me not long ago when I was studying the book of John. In John chapter 18, the apostle records the arrest of Jesus and the sham of a trial that he goes through. Most people focus on the latter half of John 18, where you have record of Peter's denial of the Lord 3 times and of the Lord's mockery of a trial by the Jewish high priest and the Sanhedrin. But at the beginning of chapter 18, something remarkable happens that I think we have maybe glossed over because we're too enamored with the more dramatic elements, let's say, of Jesus' arrest. That being Peter drawing a sword to cut off Malchus's ear and Jesus giving himself up willingly. Those are all the things that we're familiar with. But there is something that happens there in the middle of this account that I think maybe we haven't really given much thought to. I want to read a little bit from John chapter 18, starting in verse 1. The King James reads like this: When Jesus had spoke these words, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, in the which he entered, and his disciples with him. And Judas also, who betrayed him, knew the place, for Jesus oftentimes resorted thither with his disciples. Judas then, having received a band of men, of officers and chief priests of the Pharisees, came thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus therefore, knowing all things that should come unto him, went forth and said to them, Whom seek ye? They answered and said, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus said unto them, I am he. And Judas also, which was with them, which betrayed him, stood with them. So the scene is set up here in a way that I think we're all very familiar with. Jesus is with his disciples near the Garden of Gethsemane over the brook Kidron, and he has offered his prayers to the Lord, the let this cup pass be your will prayers that we're so familiar with. And after those prayers are over, he tells the disciples to get up because he knows the one who's betrayed him is coming to do just that, coming to arrest him with the rest of the motley crew of Jewish cohorts who come to carry him, they think unwillingly, to his trial. Of course, Jesus is going to go willingly. That's the great shock. But even before his actual arrest, his physical taking, something else happens. Here at the text we just read, Jesus asked them, Whom do you seek? Of course, he knows they're seeking him, but he wants them to acknowledge it. He wants them to make public statement. And so they say, We seek Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus says, I am he. I am Jesus of Nazareth. Look at verse number 6. As soon as he had said unto them, I am he, they went backwards and fell to the ground. Now, have you ever considered the significance of that verse? Or have you, like me most times, just read right by it and gone from verse 6 to verse 7 when Jesus says, Whom do you seek? Again. And again they answered, Jesus of Nazareth. And you blow right by a critical verse in number 6 where Jesus causes them to fall down. Now, maybe you could argue they fell down on their own, but that doesn't sound very reasonable. Why would people suddenly just fall down just on their own? One person loses his footing and he stumbles. One person is shocked that Jesus is so brazenly presenting himself to his arresting party. Maybe one person here, one person there. But a whole band of people following Judas' lead. All of them fall down. That's what the text says. Again, verse number 6. They went backwards and fell to the ground. They went backwards and fell. This was not just a case of some people getting weak in the knees or a sudden earthquake happening that only encompassed the very people coming to arrest Jesus because the Lord and his disciples behind him, they weren't affected by whatever this was. This was something that God did. This was something that Jesus caused, and he caused these people to fall down. This was a miracle. But the thing about miracles, whenever someone does a miracle in the Bible, whether that be Jesus himself or one of his apostles or some prophet of the Old Testament, whenever someone does a miracle, there is always a purpose behind it. There's always some significant reason for the miracle being done. God doesn't just show off. God's people, God's inspired messengers, his prophets, even the Christ himself, they never just do something just for the fun of it. They always have a purpose behind the miracle. So what is the purpose behind this miracle? God causes the people to fall down. Well, I'm not given the explanation in the text, this verse. But maybe if we keep reading, we can understand maybe why this miracle happens. Look at verse number 7. Then he asked them again, whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Again, you have to keep in mind that these people coming to arrest him have now been put on the ground. So now they're on the ground as he asks this question. He is standing in a position of authority over them. He is standing and they're on the ground. And he asks them again, tell me again, whom do you seek? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. From a very vulnerable position, they remind him that they're coming to arrest him. Verse number 8, Jesus answered, I told you that I am he. If you therefore seek me, let these go their way. Why would my Lord need to say that? Why would my Lord need to verbally declare that these people behind him, his disciples, his 11 now, because Judas is on the other side, why would he need to specifically say, let these go? What might be happening, or what might be about to happen that my Lord knows is about to happen, that he would want to make sure something bad doesn't happen beyond what is already in God's plan? One person is going to die at the end of all this, and that's Jesus. Jesus does not want Peter's blood to be spilled. He does not want Matthew's blood, or John's blood, or Andrew's blood, or James's blood. He does not want their blood to be spilled. It's his blood that's going to be shed. His blood is going to be offered. And so Jesus says, let these go. Why? What does he know that they don't know yet? Look at verse number 9. He says that the saying might be fulfilled which you spoke, of them which thou gavest me I've lost none. In other words, Jesus says this. What he's doing, what's on his mind, is the prophecy that the Messiah would be killed, but not his own people. Not him who are with him. Judas is no longer one of his. They're no longer with him. But Peter is with him, and John and Andrew are with him, and Philip is with him, and they're not going to be lost. They're not going to be killed. He's going to be killed. Verse 10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smote the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. And the servant's name was Malchus. Now again, this is a part of the text that we're very familiar with. We all know about Peter drawing a sword and taking a swing. And I imagine, I'm not the first one to imagine, that Peter was not aiming for Malchus's ear. That he was probably aiming for Malchus right about here or so, and he missed and got his ear. But again, remember, where is Malchus at this time? Malchus, according to verse number 6, is on the ground. Malchus has been knocked down by the Lord. Malchus is a vulnerable target, an easy shot. And Peter takes it. He draws his weapon and he swings down to this person who's on the ground, and he ends up cutting off his ear. What happens next is even more incredible. Verse number 11. Then Jesus said to Peter, put your sword into the sheath. The cup that my Father has given me, shall I not drink it? That is to say, this is why we're here. I have come here to be arrested. So I'm not going to fight the arrest. I am going to drink the cup of sorrow that I have asked the Father to take away, and he said no in the previous prayer. So I'm going to endure this, but we're not going to fight it. Put your sword away, Peter. Verse 12. Then the band and the captain and the officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him and led him away to what becomes his sham of a trial. I want you to imagine, though, what would happen. How would a normal group of thugs who have come to arrest Jesus with pitchforks and torches and weapons, clubs, swords, all kinds of weapons you can imagine they would bring to arrest Jesus. How would a reasonable, normal person coming with malicious intent respond to someone on the other side drawing a weapon and taking a swing at one of their own? And not just taking a swing, but actually making contact and taking off a guy's ear. Can you conceivably imagine a group of people with murderous intent, that's why they're coming to arrest him, just letting that go? Why is it the case that this crowd of people coming to arrest Jesus did not attack Peter for attacking one of them? He attacked first. Peter struck first. Why didn't they fight him back? You would have to imagine there's a lot more than 12 people on Judas's side. A lot more than 12 people came to arrest because he knew Jesus would be there with his 11. They brought a crowd of people. Why did this crowd of people not all draw their weapons? Because remember, Jesus and his disciples only had a couple of swords on them. So why did they not overwhelm them, overman them, and overgun them, and there'd be a bloodbath all over? Because that's what would have happened. That's what should have happened. That would have made sense to happen, but it didn't happen. Why? Again, remember the prophecy. Jesus says, I'm going to be the only one, not my disciples. So what does Jesus do to ensure that his disciples do not become caught up in a bloodbath? He's not taking away Peter's free will. Peter is still going to exercise his free will to do a bad thing, to draw a weapon and try to fight. But Jesus does something on his own. Before Peter does that, he knocks everyone on the other side down, puts them all on the ground, so that when Peter draws his weapon, everyone else is in a position not to fight back. They allow the strike to happen because they can't get up in time to stop him. It all happens very quickly, and before they could get up and fight back, Jesus reaches down, picks up the man's ear, and puts it back on his head. So now there's no harm, no foul. Now they can't say, well, he cut off my ear, I need vengeance. Your ear's back on your face, pal. You don't have any beef anymore. So he tells Peter, put your sword away. It's a signal to them, we're not here to fight. And then he opens his arms, and he goes peacefully. Now that cohort, that motley crew of criminals, has no reason to attack Peter or Andrew, James, John, any of the disciples. They let them go, and they take Jesus. Isn't that a remarkable thing? Isn't it amazing what my Lord did to ensure that Peter did not die on that night? Because he very easily could have, and probably should have, and certainly would have, had that crowd of people gathered, had the opportunity to use the weapons they brought. Instead, according to verse number 6, a verse that we often just blow right by, Jesus made sure they were all on the ground and weren't able to fight. So he could take himself willingly and go and die for you. Isn't that amazing? You learn some amazing things when you read this book carefully. Go through it verse by verse. Study your Bible carefully. And over you will discover a fountain of great truths contained therein. Thank you very much.